Hey everyone, today we're diving into a topic that's rarely discussed, but affects so many of us in ways we don't even realise. What happens to a child who isn't loved properly? Now you might think that the most natural response is anger, that the child would grow up resenting the people who withheld love. But the reality? It's far more complicated and far more heartbreaking. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand just how deep the effects of a lack of love go, and more importantly, what can be done about it. Let's start by talking about the child's experience. Picture this: a young child growing up, not receiving the love they desperately need. What do they feel? Anger, maybe? Sadness? Of course. But the dominant emotion they carry is shame. A child who isn't loved doesn't think, "Why aren't my parents loving me?" Instead, they ask themselves, "What's wrong with me?" They assume that they are the problem. They feel unworthy, inadequate, almost like they're stained with some invisible flaw that everyone can see. And here's the tragic part: instead of blaming the parents or caregivers who fail to show love, the child blames themselves. Imagine how lonely that is. The very people who are supposed to protect and nurture you are the ones making you feel broken. But the child can't comprehend that something is wrong with their parents. No, the child's mind says, "It must be me." Now, as this child grows older, they usually take one of two paths, both rooted in that deep sense of shame. Let's explore these paths. The first path? Overcompensation. The child decides, if I wasn't good enough to be loved, I'm going to become so good, so perfect, that no one will ever be able to deny me again. They throw themselves into schoolwork, sports, or any area where they can prove their worth. These are the kids who go the extra mile. Always polite, always top of their class, always striving for approval. On the outside, they might seem successful, but on the inside, they're driven by a desperate need to prove that they're worthy of love. No matter how much they achieve, it's never enough to fill that empty space where love should have been. Then we have the second path, rebellion. These children say, if I'm bad, then I'm going to be really bad. Maybe they get into trouble at school. Maybe they break the rules. Maybe they vandalize the neighborhood or act out in dangerous ways. It's as if they're trying to match the outside world to the chaos they feel inside. But here's the thing, whether they're the straight-A student or the troublemaker, both paths are a reaction to the same deep pain. Both are ways of coping with that core belief that they're not good enough. These kids, whether they go down the path of being too good or being too bad, they're stuck in a trap. They believe that if they just work hard enough, or if they just rebel hard enough, they'll somehow be able to escape this feeling of being unlovable. But here's the cruel twist. It doesn't work. Being the best student or the worst troublemaker doesn't heal the wound of not being loved. It only deepens it. Why? Because no matter what the child does, they're still operating under the belief that they're the problem, that they are fundamentally flawed. So, what's the way out? How do you escape a trap that's invisible but all-consuming? Here's where things get powerful. The only way to truly heal is to come to a painful but liberating realization. It was never your fault. Let that sink in for a moment. As children, we don't have the mental capacity to question our parents' behavior. We can't ask ourselves, what's wrong with these people who are supposed to love me? Instead, we turn the question inward. What's wrong with me? But the truth is, there's nothing wrong with you. The shame you feel is not your burden to carry. The reason you weren't loved wasn't because you were unlovable. It was because the people responsible for loving you were incapable of doing so, whether through their own emotional limitations, trauma, or dysfunction. This is hard to accept because it feels safer to believe that we had some control, that maybe if we were better, we could have changed things. But the truth is liberating once you can see it clearly. You were never the problem. Now, what does this realization mean for you today? It means that healing is possible, but it also means breaking the cycle, because here's the thing: unresolved shame carries on. If you don't confront it, it can show up in your adult life in ways you don't expect. Maybe you find yourself in relationships where you're constantly seeking validation. Or maybe you push people away, afraid that they'll eventually see what you think is your true self, this unworthy, flawed person. But remember, that shame is based on a lie. You don't need to keep proving your worth. You are already worthy. So how do you begin to heal? It starts with self-compassion. You have to learn to treat yourself with the kindness and understanding that you didn't receive as a child. You have to remind yourself over and over again that you are always deserving of love. Healing from this kind of shame is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. But each step you take, each time you remind yourself of your inherent worth, you're breaking free of that old pattern. Therapy, self-reflection, and even surrounding yourself with people who love you for who you truly are can be incredibly helpful. But most importantly, healing comes from forgiving yourself for something that was never your fault to begin with. You were never bad. You were never broken. You were simply a child in need of love, and that love was not given to you in the way you deserved. But now you have the power to give that love to yourself. If you've stayed with me this far, I want you to know that you are already on the path to healing. Just by listening, by reflecting, you're taking the first steps. Remember, it's never too late to rewrite the story you've been telling yourself. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this. Together we can break free of the shame and start living the lives we were always meant to live. You are worthy of love, always.